Hello, audience. I have good news about the touring car. I've gone back to work on it. Now, a while ago, I kind of finished the right front door. I have that aligned, finished assembling it, and it's currently out getting the finishing bodywork done on it. Now, in a previous video, I made a temporary door latch for this, and I said that I was going to eventually make the latches for all three doors, and I was going to make a video about that. Well, I'm currently doing that right now, and that was going to be the next video, but guess what? It's taking a lot longer than expected. So I'm going to work on something else. Now, one problem this car has had is the parking brake doesn't really work all that well. Reason being, there's a lot of parts missing. So in this video, we're going to fix that. And here's what I got. New brake rods, brake shoes, actuators, levers, hardware, return springs. More detail about this stuff as we go. On this side, you can see it already has some kind of aftermarket lined brake shoe on it. And you may remember some time ago I replaced the wheel bearing seals on this, and they're still leaking. And I think the reason for that is the bearing's loose. Because even with the modern neoprene seals and all that stuff, if the axle shaft is bent or if the bearing's loose, it can still leak. That's not good for the brakes. So, I don't know if I'm going to do something about that right now or not. Okay, I thought about it and I decided I'm going to try to do something about this. Even though I can't fix it right at the moment, I think I can make it better. I just realized that even if I can tighten up the bearing, it wouldn't do any good unless I replace the seals again, and I don't have any new ones. So I'm just going to clean up the bearing, repack it, and put it back in. And I put that back together. So now we'll start working on the linkage. Now the actuator, or the cam, or whatever you call it, looks like it's still got an original on it. And compared to the new one, it still looks pretty good, but I'm going to replace it anyway because I can. Now, it looks like somebody already took this apart once because the rivets are not peened over at all, so it should be fairly easy to remove. So here's the old actuator, which is actually in pretty good shape. Compared to the new one, it's just kind of got the edges worn down a little bit. Typically when you see these, they're worn perfectly round, and this part's worn out pretty good. So it's reusable, but I bought a new one, so I'm going to use it anyway. It also has an original lever, in pretty good shape, so I'm going to save it. But since I bought a new one, I'm going to use that too. Now, like I said, whoever put this together last time did no effort to peen these over, so this needed to be serviced. The new one comes with a new set of pins, which is good. An important thing to keep in mind on these is, with these there's a left and a right, and the difference is the angle of the holes. So when you install it, when this is level, the lever should be leaning towards the back of the car. Now there's a separate bushing that goes in here, which I didn't even think about up till now. Luckily, the old one is still good. And now the left side. As you can see on the left side, there's nothing. No brake shoes, no levers, no rods, no nothing. So when I was driving this, I only had a one-wheel parking brake. And if you think that's dangerous, well, you're right. Now, if there's anyone watching that doesn't know how a Model T brake system works, this is a good time to explain just what I'm doing. Now, this is the parking brake, or you could technically call it an emergency brake because it's separate from the service brake, but it's made more for holding the car still than stopping it while it's moving. The actual service brake is a band inside the transmission. The parking brake is somewhat of a more conventional design. It has a brake drum on each rear wheel. The only strange thing about it is the original brake shoes were cast iron with no lining on them. Now, a lot of bizarre, seemingly unconventional ideas from the Edwardian era made more sense in their time and their proper context. This, however, is not one of them. Because even back when these cars were new, people complained about how ineffective the brakes were. And as a result, even very early on, a number of companies made aftermarket brakes that attach to these, usually something that attaches to the rear wheels. One common aftermarket part that's been available is a set of parking brake shoes that actually have brake lining on them. And that's what I have. They've been made by various different companies over the years. This is what's commercially available today. I got these from Snyder about a week ago. They're pretty much the exact same design as the originals. They use the same mounting, the same springs. They just have a smaller outside diameter to make room for lining. Now, this is one trick I do to make the job a little easier. Both sides of the pins need to be peened over. So I assemble it out of the car and peen over one side, take them apart, put them back in, so that when it's on, I only have to peen over one side. Kind of like that. And now there's a slight problem. This arm, they don't make a left and a right. They make one that's supposed to work on both sides. The problem is, it points straight forward or straight back, and the rod runs at an angle. So to make it work, either the rod needs to be bent or this needs to be angled slightly. Most originals of these I've seen are angled slightly, so I'm going to twist this one till it lines up with the rod. Didn't need much, that should be enough. This bolt shouldn't be tight. It should be just snug enough to hold this with no play whatsoever, but it should be free enough to move. I've just installed the brake rods and now I'm in the process of adjusting them. Now, adjusting the parking brake on a Model T is somewhat tricky if you're not used to it, because the parking brake lever not only applies the brakes, but it also doubles as the high gear lockout, which is how you hold it in neutral. So the lever should have some travel to where it will lock out high gear but not apply the brakes. And then if you apply it further back, it should apply the brakes. Now, at what range of travel does this all apply? That's arguable, depends on who you talk to. People set them up different ways. The way I set them up, which is the way I believe they were originally, is I set it to where the lever can move up to about half travel, which is about straight up and down, maybe a few notches before that, and the wheels still roll freely, but past that, the brakes immediately start to apply. Now I have the way this one's set up. The brakes are hard on at about 5 notches past center. It may be more or less than that, depending on what kind of brake lining or just what kind of brake system you're using, but the brakes should be locked on before the lever reaches the end of its travel, and that is the case with this. Now that the brakes are adjusted, I'm going to install the cotter pins. Whatever you do, do not forget this step. Well, they seem to be working properly. Now, will they stop the car in an emergency? I think they will, but I really have no idea. We'll just have to wait until next time this car is running to try it. So anyway, that's it for now. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.